day 593 of the Trump administration, and what a back-to-work Tuesday it was. Day one of the Supreme Court confirmation hearings. More on that in a moment. And while that was going on, the first report surfaced about what's in Bob Woodward's new book, and the advanced details are rather devastating. The book is called Fear: Trump in the White House. Woodward writes that he conducted and recorded, notably, hundreds of hours of interviews for the book, while also reviewing notes, personal diaries, government documents. The Washington Post reports that Woodward describes, quote, a nervous breakdown of the executive branch under this president, and that, quote, Woodward depicts Trump's anger and paranoia about the Russia inquiry as unrelenting, at times paralyzing the West Wing for entire days. Among the most revealing details are the interactions between President Trump and his first lead attorney in the Russia investigation, who you'll remember was John Dowd. According to the Post, Bob Woodward writes that Dowd was convinced that Trump would commit perjury if he ever talked to Mueller. Dowd and Trump's criminal defense team tried to prep the president for a possible Mueller sit-down during practice sessions back in January. Quote, Dowd peppered Trump with questions about the Russia investigation, provoking stumbles, contradictions, and lies until the president eventually lost his cool. This thing's a GD hoax, Trump erupted at the start of a 30-minute rant that finished with him saying, I really don't want to testify. I don't really want to testify, that should be. The Post says that Woodward's account reveals Trump's attorneys insisted to Mueller that Trump's testimony was a bad idea because of how it would make the president look. In March, John Dowd reportedly told Mueller, quote, I'm not going to sit there and let him look like an idiot. And you publish that transcript because everything leaks in Washington, and the guys overseas are going to say, I told you he was an idiot. I told you he was a GD dumbbell. What are you dealing with this idiot for? John, I understand, Mueller replied. Later, Dowd reportedly told the president, quote, don't testify. It's either that or an orange jumpsuit. I'll be a really good witness, Trump told Dowd, according to Woodward. You are not a good witness, Dowd replied. Mr. President, I'm afraid I just can't help you. The next day, Dowd handed in his resignation. Woodward also details the actions of some top aides in the White House, including former economic advisor, Goldman Sachs veteran Gary Cohn. Quote, according to Woodward, Cohn stole a letter off Trump's desk that the president was intending to sign to formally withdraw the U.S. from a trade agreement with South Korea. Cohn later told an associate that he removed the letter to protect national security. Woodward illustrates the chief of staff, John Kelly's, feelings about the president. Quote, Kelly said of Trump, he's an idiot. It's pointless to try to convince him of anything. He's gone off the rails. We're in crazy town. I don't even know why any of us are here. This is the worst job I've ever had. Today, Kelly issued a response calling Woodward's account, quote, BS. Woodward did request interviews with President Trump, which were not granted. After the manuscript was published in August, the president called Woodward to say he wanted to talk. Today, the Washington Post released a recording of that call.
I don't mind.
Sorry we missed the opportunity to talk for the book.
Well, I just spoke with Kellyanne, and she asked me if I got a call. I never got a call. I never got a message. Who did you ask about speaking to me?
Well, about 6 people.
Well, they don't tell me.
Senator, I talked to Kellyanne about it 2.5 months ago. I've got to go talk to people and see them outside of the White House and outside of their offices, and gained a lot of insight and documentation. And it's a tough look at the world and your administration and you.
Right. Well, I assume that means it's going to be a negative book, but I'm sort of 50% used to that. That's all right.
The president was aware the recording was underway, by the way. Tonight, the president wrote that the book's quotes were made-up frauds, a con on the public. He wondered if Woodward was a Democratic operative. And on the Russia front, there is new reporting from the New York Times on the negotiations between Mueller and Trump's legal team. Times puts it this way, quote, Mueller will accept written answers from President Trump on questions about whether his campaign conspired with Russia's election interference. Mr. Mueller's office told Mr. Trump's lawyers in a letter 2 people briefed on it said on Tuesday on whether the president tried to obstruct the inquiry itself. Mr. Mueller and his investigators understood that issues of executive privilege could complicate their pursuit of a presidential interview and did not ask for written responses on that matter. Tonight, NBC News is reporting that a person familiar with the matter says discussions are, quote, moving in a positive direction. That's certainly the line some Trump surrogates took on television tonight. Let's bring in our leadoff panel on a busy Tuesday night. Philip Rucker, Pulitzer Prize-winning White House bureau chief for The Washington Post. Jeremy Bash, former chief of staff at CIA and the Pentagon, also a national security analyst for us, and Barbara McQuade, former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan. Good evening and welcome to you all. And Philip, I try gamely to prevent you from ever passing judgment on one of the stories that comes before us, but you have read now and reported on this book. You report on this White House every day. Do the two portraits match up?
They absolutely do, Brian. And what we have in Woodward's book is a lot of new detail and color and scenes and episodes that fit in with the broader narrative that I think has been very clear now of this president, really showing a lack of knowledge and information about the world, a lack of curiosity, and alarming his advisors. And what Woodward details is again and again and again his military leaders, General Dunford, for example, Secretary Mattis, the defense secretary, and others just being alarmed by this president, by decisions that he wants to make. For example, he said in a phone call to General Mattis, the defense secretary, that he wanted to assassinate Bashar al-Assad, the leader of Syria, and his people. And Mattis, when he hung up the phone, had to tell his senior aide, no, we're not going to do any of that. We're going to be much more measured than that. So there's an effort by all of these senior officials in the administration to be guardrails for what they believed would be very dangerous and unwise actions that the president wanted to do.
I intend to ask John Brennan a question about that in just a minute's time from now. So, Jeremy Bash, in your lifetime, did you think you'd ever read about or hear of a letter being swiped off the desk of the President of the United States, lest he read it or, even worse, sign it?
No, Brian. And what we see here is our system of government is heaving under enormous strain because we have a president whose cabinet does not trust his fundamental judgment. They believe he's unfit to make core decisions about national security, about life and death. And they not only are alarmed, as was just referenced, but they actually believe that his actions are a direct threat to national security, and they have to take unprecedented steps to prevent that from happening.
Barbara McQuade, these portions about lawyers conducting a practice session with the president and then relating the results of that to Mueller, does that, given your experience, I know you weren't in the room, or for either instance, does that ring true to you?
I don't know. You know, it's the idea that they would do a practice interview does ring true to me. I think that that's a common scenario to help someone understand what it might be like to go through that. But to then try to use that as an excuse to not conduct the interview does not seem like a winning argument. You know, the law says that a grand jury is entitled to every man's evidence, is the way the law was phrased long ago. That includes a president. And so just because you're bad at telling the truth doesn't mean you get out of it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.